So, hi there. It's my great pleasure to be introducing to you today Sali McIntyre, who is an amazing mother, grandmother, the writer of this incredible book that we are about to explore, Womb Medicine, The Art of Yoni Steaming for Women's Health. She is also a birth keeper and birth worker and the owner of the most gorgeous health centre, the Heart and Soul of Wellness in Murwillumbah, and the most beautiful retreat centre, which is the Heart and Soul of Wellness at Crystal Creek. Yeah. So, Sali, welcome.
Good morning. We're at Nobby's Creek.
Nobby's Creek, I'm sorry. Yeah, so right next door. It's near Crystal Creek, isn't it? Look at that paradise.
Next valley over.
Oh, just absolutely beautiful. So if you ever want to host or hold a retreat, or you want to check out what retreats are on offer there, it's very close to the Coolangatta Airport and an amazing place to be. So we're going to be exploring the art and craft of Yoni steaming today in our interview. And I had the great privilege of actually doing a Yoni steaming workshop with Sali and absolutely loving every minute of the experience. And so, yeah, I just love to hear a little bit about the history of this art and science. Sali, tell us what got you interested in this particular art form, healing modality.
Well, I did the Arvigo massage practitioner training with Rosita Arvigo, and until I had, comes from the Maya tradition in Central America, and until I came across this work, I had never heard of Yoni steaming. Like, even to this day, many people still go, "What? What is this?" And I was absolutely astonished that, with my long time interest in women's health and the reproductive system and with my own womb healing, how had I never heard of that? And to this day, I'm blown away that this information, this wisdom was so not available to women. It wasn't in any midwifery textbooks. It wasn't even mentioned in a novel or in an anthropological way. Yeah, that really blew my mind. And so as part of the Arvigo training, like Rosita herself, she learned from traditional Maya midwives. And in that culture, even to this day, they use Yoni steaming just like we would take a Panadol for a headache. If they've got menstrual pain, if they've got any issues, they would be asked, "Have you done your womb steam?"
Really?
And yeah. And so I never actually intended to write a book about Yoni steaming, but I was so fascinated by it that I started researching and reading and finding out. So I did the Arvigo training in 2014, which was 7 years ago, and there was nothing available about it back then. And now, if you just look up Yoni steaming on the website, you'll get thousands of hits.
Really?
And there's so much information, and practitioners are setting up, and people are selling herbs, and they're selling the crafted boxes, and so it's become not quite mainstream, but certainly left of mainstream, knowledge, and women are rediscovering Yoni steaming as a grassroots, radical way of self-care. Doesn't cost anything. All you need is your herbs, your steam, some sort of box. And sorry, the postie's here. The postie's beeping at me. And women are sharing this experience with each other.
Yeah.
That's where my passion lies, that we share this knowledge, this wisdom with each other, because I believe that it is part of the new feminine knowledge which has become available since 2012, when the Maya calendar was prophesizing the end of the world, but in actual fact it was the beginning of a new cycle. And from all that I've read and understood, it's like the re-emergence of the divine feminine.
Yes.
So I think this is part of that wave of healing that came out of that.
I'm getting chills. I'm getting chills. The end of the patriarchy and the start of these matrilinear and feminine tools and healing tools that are really ancient, because it's not just I believe from what you've shared, Sally, in your book and in the workshop, that this is not just a Mayan technique either, right? A lot of cultures embrace this as their traditional women's health prerogative or baseline. Yeah.
Yes, it goes across pretty much every culture.
Wow.
Of the world, like certainly the land-based cultures, but also medieval Europe, you know, Scotland, Ireland. There's an awesome book called The Trotula, which is a book about health in medieval Europe, and they mentioned steaming in that. Like they used the word fumigating.
Fumigating. You know? Oh my goodness.
Fumigating. Pardon?
That sounds awful, doesn't it?
Yeah. And the old English language is really, you know, cute, you know, like fumigating your regions down there, you know, that kind of thing, or the nether regions, you know. But certainly Asia, Southeast Asia, India, Africa, all of those, North America, the Indian tradition, they've all used steaming, the Australian Aboriginals, and whatever they would have, like, some cultures would be more, they would use smoking.
Yes, right.
So
right.
They would heat up the hot stones and create a fire and put leaves over the top of the burning coals to create that smoke, you know, but always with that intention of cleansing, soothing, healing, you know, cleansing out the lining of the womb, basically, so that she can get on and do her job.
Amazing. And why do you think it was repressed or suppressed as a technique? Do you think that was the you know, the result of the more what do you call it, the mechanical structures of medicine, or the scientific methods of Western medicine taking a hold, or were there other factors there? I wonder.
Well, I mean, I've thought a lot about this, and I think part of it was definitely when medicine was, or especially women's medicine and midwifery, was taken over by men, and birth, for example, was taken away from the home and away from the hearth, and it was gradually, you know, became more hospital based, and women, as we all know, were persecuted for having healing knowledge and for using herbs. Yes. And midwives were persecuted. So because steaming is so intimately associated with midwifery and is so fantastic for postnatal time, I think that maybe is partly the fear-based, just women just held it on. They didn't divulge that information unless it was done in secret. But also, I also wonder, and part of that I think is that knowledge was handed down from apprentice to just, you know, from mentor to apprentice. Yes. So that, so if that stopped, you know, because of fear or for whatever reason, then it wasn't actually being handed down. So maybe we have to go back further to find where it came from, or maybe we have to make it up as we go along all over again, which I think is certainly happening now in the 21st century. Yes. Because the way I learnt to do Yoni steaming is very different to the way I'm starting to look at it now. And it's almost becoming much more of a, you know, it's that science meets magic meets medicine. It's, you know, because more and more Yoni steaming is being used to work with menstrual difficulties by looking at the menstrual cycle and going, okay, are you bleeding too much? Are you having painful periods? Is your cycle too long? Is your cycle too short? And there being different herbs and different protocols available to treat, you know, all of those different scenarios. So the way I was taught was, you go out into the garden and you tune into the plant and you go, what do I need today? You know, which is still my kind of default way of prescribing herbs. Yes. What do I love? You know, do I love rose petals? Of course I love rose petals. Let's put that in there, you know. And I do think that we all know that herbs are really powerful, so that you can't willy-nilly go, I'm going to do a bit of this and a bit of that. You have to have a kind of a basic knowledge of what herbs are doing what, and why you need those herbs. And again, my understanding is that we are making this up as we go along, you know, to identify the herbs which are disinfecting, so which would be good for steaming for infections. The herbs, and this is very basic, obviously, which herbs are cooling, which would be good for someone, you know, say for menopause or someone having hot flushes, which herbs are deodorizing, and it's not like these are all in their own, you know, it's not one and not another. Which herbs are deodorizing, you know, which herbs are really gentle and everyone can use. So coming up with the herbs that we know are safe. We have pretty much an understanding of what is safe for everybody, regardless of their cycle, regardless of their age, regardless of their condition, but then working more specifically with other herbs for specific conditions.
That is so phenomenal. What a world of information that we could potentially be putting words to and documenting, because also I guess what came to mind then as you were talking was the fact that a lot of women were not literate to put these things down on paper for the record for later generations to access. And so keepers of the knowledge, you know, that knowledge was passed down orally with the apprenticeship systems that were in place that we've sadly, you know, lost along the way. And this amazing opportunity that we all have as literate women to document and to make sure these records are not lost for our future generations. And that's what I love and admire so much about the book, Sally. Just tell me a little bit, though, about what it took to overcome fear of the persecution, the witch wound, you know, that we all know so well if we're in these healing fields. What did you do to overcome that?
Well, you were part of the journey. It took years. It took years to write that book, literally.
Yeah.
And it brought up every shred of self-doubt, fear. I was so concerned that somebody was just going to pick up the book and go, oh yeah, I could do this, without looking more in, you know, they were going to take information out of context and somehow hurt themselves. That seemed to be my major fear. And the reason that book got edited and re-edited and rewritten and things taken out and things put back in again. So, and I think it's not just a book about Yoni steaming either. So it's just a very gentle introduction to women taking charge of their reproductive health. Because what you were talking about before about the knowledge not being written down, we actually didn't have a need for Yoni steaming in the way it's being used today.
I see.
Generations ago. Because women weren't leading such frantic lives. And women weren't trying to work all the way through their menstrual cycle without a rest. They were trying to be a mother and have a job and be a wife. And you know, so I think it's fair to say that a few generations ago, it would have been a whole different scenario. Yeah,
that's quite remarkable that you just said that, because I guess it's a good segue into my next question about who, you know, are I guess who is going to benefit the most from this healing tool. And what a fascinating thing that the world has definitely reduced the importance of the red tent, where women were once given opportunities to rest while they were bleeding and to actually recuperate and do the visionary work of their communities while they were in the red tents too. I mean, how many of us would benefit from just knowing that the radical self-care of taking oneself away in private to do something, you know, for our reproductive system could be a political act of rebellion against the mainframe that is making us all suffer from endometriosis and period issues and mental health issues that go with that as well, right? So I just want to acknowledge your bravery as, you know, a woman with the courage, and I saw the courage that it took you to push this book across the line, and thanks to the amazing publishers as well that were also very receptive to this information and wanted to push it across that line as well. I think we have to see that as a that in itself as a political act of rebellion against the mainframe.
Yes. Yes.
So who is going to benefit from the book and from using the technique?
I think that after having written the book, and I'm sure there's another book in there somewhere for postnatal women, because I think traditionally that is where it has been most, if it's ever been documented.
Yes.
Or it's for the postpartum period.
Right.
So it's, and this also ties in with the need for women to rest after birth.
Uh-huh.
So just like women keep going through the menstrual cycles, up until fairly recently, most women, the guidance they were getting was not to rest after their birth. Women were thinking that they needed to get up, you know, get going and get back into their skinny jeans, and they have not been told to rest and let their womb recover, to let the ligaments recover, to let the pelvic floor recover. Well, you know this. So I think it's certainly where my particular interest lies, is for postpartum women, but also for, as we talked about before, for women who've got missing periods.
Yes.
Whose cycles are really long or haphazard, women with hormonal imbalance, and as you said, endometriosis, infections, you know, every reproductive issue there is. I'm not saying that Yoni Steaming will heal it. I would never say that about anything.
Yes.
But I think it's a very important, you know, piece in the women's medicine cabinet, you know, that's, again, something that they can do themselves. And I think Yoni Steaming goes hand in hand with Chinese medicine.
Yes.
You know, through the judicial use of herbs and acupuncture. I think it goes really well with all sorts of energy healing.
Yes.
So it's just something, you know, something that you do yourself along with your team. You know, when you've got an issue that needs to be made whole,
yes,
you have it, you know. So
I love it. I found it the most incredible ripple effect after I did the workshop with you, Sally, and I connected really on such a comfortable, safe level with the other women in the workshop as well, with that shared kindred interest in healing the feminine, I guess. What I noticed as a ripple effect of my treatment, because we all had that privilege of being able to partake in the Yoni Steam in the workshop, was the ripple effect of deep internal nourishment that felt like it was way, way more than physical. You know, it felt like physically pleasant, but it also felt to me like emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, I had been held by the goddess somehow. And I just felt like the profound ripple effect of that, us reconnecting to the deep feminine, to me was the highlight of that experience. So for anyone out there who's wondering if it is for you, then I encourage an investigation, and I encourage to read the book as well, to understand where this might apply to you personally, and also where it might be useful for your women friends, your daughters, your grandmothers, your mothers, your aunties, your sisters, you know,
your teenage daughter, you know.
Teenage daughter. And that was a beautiful thing about your workshop too, was that there was a mother and her grown, older teenage or maybe early 20s daughter there, and they had a bonding experience, experiencing this ancient art, which we're very, very fortunate to have to be, you know, given access to. So thank you for your for your hand in making it accessible as well. So I'd be really interested in, I guess, some of the herbs that are used. So some of the adjunctive therapies. You've already answered the question that Chinese medicine is a wonderful adjunctive therapy to this. What kind of herbs do you recommend for yoni steaming, and are there any other treatments that go hand in hand with this treatment?
Okay, so the herbs that I learnt from Rosita, which was what she would say, the Maya women, was like, I think there was 12, and they would be ones that I certainly recognise, and most people would recognise, like now see if I can get 12, oregano, basil, calendula, marigold, motherwort, mugwort, rose, yarrow, lavender, rosemary. They're all really familiar herbs, and for the most part loved herbs.
Yes.
What else, you know, and as I look around, and it's almost like every time I look at a yoni steaming site, it's like, oh my God, they're using this, and somebody's trying this, and people are using CBD, medical cannabis, to steam with.
Right.
They're using sea salt, apple cider vinegar. You know, if you don't have herbs available, you can use sea salt, or you can use apple cider vinegar, particularly for infections.
Yes.
And if you don't have any herbs, you can just use the steam. So, but yeah, so there's so many nourishing, amazing herbs, like red clover, red raspberry leaf, nettles.
Wow.
Nettles is another beautiful one. So what I have learned from the way Kelly Garza from Steamy Chic has presented her information is that you need to have, in a yoni steam mix, you need to have a cooling herb.
I see.
You need to have a deodorizing herb. You need to have a cleansing herb. You have to have one that makes it smell nice, like the aromatherapy aspect, like rose or lavender or rosemary. And you have to have, and this is where it's marrying in with Chinese medicine, you have a kidney tonic or a blood tonic.
Yes.
Which is where you often bring in nettles, because nettles is so nourishing. And then mugwort, which is a traditional Chinese herb that is used so often, and motherwort. You know, they're probably amongst my favourites. But as I said, and there are North American herbs that I haven't even heard of.
Yes.
That we are using, you know. I literally haven't heard of them, and I'm not familiar with them at all.
Okay.
So, but, and like Rosita used to say, if you've got oregano in your herb cupboard, use that. You know? and so. And what have you got growing in your garden? It doesn't, you know, you can, and often I think when you fall in love with this art and you start to grow herbs, because there's nothing more satisfying than going out into the garden, picking your own herbs for your own steam, you know, because when you acknowledge the herbs for their healing powers with gratitude, you pick the plants with reverence, you set up the whole steam set up with reverence, you bless the water. Because it's the properties of the water, like you always use, wherever possible, purified water to do your steam, rather than just turn the tap on in most most cities. And as you are stirring up your pot, you are bringing your intention to the ceremony. So it becomes much more than just I think that if you didn't do any of those things, it would still be beneficial, but it's just layering the benefits on the benefits on the benefits. And as you talked about, it is awakening that divine feminine instinct, intuition in yourself that knows what you need. You know, your womb knows what you need, even learning to listen. Like I've had a lot of issues with trusting my intuition versus, but the books say this, you know, and trying, and that's also another reason the book was so fraught with difficulties, you know, rather than just letting things come through my intuition. It was just like, well, they need to be. So, because none of this is at this point evidence-based, it's all anecdotal.
Yes.
And people who say that Yoni Steaming is a load of crock, you know, you can't actually say, well, the studies say.
Yes.
Or you've got women going, well, this helped me. And
yeah.
I had a period for 6 months and I did one steam and I got it that night.
Yeah.
You know,
yes,
that's the kind of.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
But there is the first Yoni Steam study, which you've probably seen, the fourth trimester.
Awesome.
Which is done by Kimberly Johnson and Kelly Garza. And you can find that. Just Google fourth trimester Yoni Steam and you'll get all that, you know, the results of that. It was done with 14 postnatal women in the first 8 or 12 days after birth, you know. So it's starting, you know, as we get more, you know, maybe, I don't know, do we need money behind us? I don't know. But that's generally where the research is done, isn't it? With people trying to push something, you know.
It often is, but the unfortunate thing about our medical system and the research is that women's bodies were often excluded from research because of our hormonal cycles, right? So a lot of the studies we read about, even things like collagen, for example, are done on men's bodies because they don't have the nuances and the possible muddying of the waters of a hormonal cycle. And that just makes me really excited for the future, that women are taking the helm of these research projects and saying absolutely no more exclusion of a woman's body from this research. And that we also, like you said, Sal, have to take charge of our intuitive push towards this work, towards making it widely accessible. And I'm really inspired by women like you who push the barriers, and also by your long history in this field of birth keeping and women's wellness. It's absolutely essential that we listen to women who have had the long years of being in the front lines, you know, seeing this as it really is in the world. And we still, sadly, have a long way to go before there is genuine parity, right?
Absolutely.
But I love that you mentioned the research, because yes, there will be the naysayers and the non-believers, and that yes, they do need the some substance. And the other thing that came to mind there was this push towards the stress response in the body, that just through that alone, that in our nervous system stress response, our blood flows into the arms and legs, getting us ready to fight, flee or freeze. And that when we're in a yoni steam, we're actually bringing the circulation back to the central abdominal and pelvic organs, which is really, really important for our nervous systems. And that alone, to me, is a selling point that any woman who's experiencing stress could actually benefit from that increase in circulation to the reproductive organs that we lose in an anxious world. Busy world.
And can I also say, and you'll be able to verify this, my understanding is that the vagus nerve, which comes down
right through the longest nerve in the body from our brainstem,
it goes all the way to the cervix. It has nerve endings in the cervix, so that when you are steaming, it is actually starting to help unravel the stress held in the pelvic floor from decades ago of sexual abuse, perhaps, where the pelvic floor, where the womb, where the sexual organs have been held in that fright or flight. And that the yoni steaming begins to just gently unravel that process by the process of steam, softening the actual cells of the cervix. That's my understanding of it. You know,
that makes perfect sense. Having been as I'm working in the field of pelvic health and pelvic floor physiotherapy, knowing that so much so many women are experiencing tonal issues with the pelvic floor muscles, and that the research is there to show that the cultural, religious, and abuse influences the tonal qualities of those muscles and that area of the body a lot, and that actually adjunctively counseling goes, you know, hand in hand with pelvic floor work, because it does contain often work to that area does often unlock a lot of that those deeply held traumatic memories as well. And if we look at this as a holistic science, I guess the other part of the experience of Yoni steaming is the connection that you feel with other women when you're engaged in that art form. Like in your workshop, for example, it was actually the connection with the women boiling the herbs on the stove, as we did, stirring the cauldron, reconnecting to those probably quite deeply held ancestral memories of a time where women actually did that shoulder to shoulder work. And I really thought that was so deeply beneficial to that nervous system response that often says, this is actually really terrifying to be revealing myself intimately or to be engaged in a group situation as well, right? To experience the work with, you know, so yes, it can be a solitary craft, but it can also be something that we do well as women in circle. Yeah.
Yes, and it's so much fun. I mean, I always do singing in those workshops since that first one.
I love it.
It's like, it just seems like it just has to happen, you know. but also, I think also, as we talked about the wounded feminine, many women are very connected to their, and I count myself amongst them as well. You know, I'm very connected into my head, into my mind, into my thinking.
Yes.
And the to-do list is always, you know, very long. You know, as I said to you before, I'm just trying to keep up with myself. But that ability to drop down into that receptive, deep, feminine space is really challenging. You know, and I don't find it easy at all. And I know other women don't as well, you know, and again, particularly because there's so much to do, you know.
Plus it's confrontational for us to actually sit with the dark mother, where some of our traumas, you know, is there. We will avoid that. We'll distract ourselves, and the world is set up for distraction. So really, again, it's an act of political rebellion to sit with oneself in beingness, which is very feminine, as opposed to doingness, which is very masculine. And to actually reinstall and reprogram some of the hypnotic influences that tell us that we must be busy to prove our worth and to prove that we are, you know,
we are enough.
Are meaningful. I think the very act of being still and being in that space of beingness is really challenging for most of us. So I totally hear you on that, and yet it's one of the most important things we could possibly offer our bodies as women as well.
and our daughters, you know, and our granddaughters, and it's like we're breaking some sort of, I don't know what you would call it, but we're now moving forward, and it's up to us to pass on the baton to these young women who will grow up with the knowledge that, certainly for my generation, we didn't know. We didn't know about the menstrual cycle. We didn't know about our fertility symptoms and cycles. You know, we were, you know, really poorly educated for the most part. And whereas these days, all that information is available to young girls before their menarche even.
Yes.
And so that in itself is going to be huge, that women understand what's going on in their bodies, you know, and their reproductive cycle, and their wounds, and
I love that, because maybe, just maybe, some of the reason why these art forms were repressed was also due to the shame that a lot of us carry about being intuitive, sensual creatures as women. And I know, especially for myself personally, having any kind of Catholic influence, it's very, challenging to override some of that conditioning that actually disconnects us from our sensuality and from our sexuality, and that that shame often keeps that intact, that quite harmful belief that there's something not right about being awakened in that way. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So you have really exciting news today too, Sal. Sorry, did you want to say something before?
No, that's all right. We could keep talking for a long time about this.
I would love for you to show us your incredible new surprise that you showed me earlier. That is just so wonderful.
So can you see that? So there's literally just came yesterday. This is the first set in the country. Can you see that?
The healing cards. So these are 60 Yoni Steaming cards with a guidebook.
Yeah.
Juicy, yummy. Oh my goodness.
So these as opposed to the book, which was fraught with pain and self-doubt and agony, these cards just flowed really quickly. And I went to a workshop with Animal Dreaming Publishing, and over the course of the weekend, it was almost like they got downloaded. I know that sounds really, not a trendy thing to say these days, but it was just like, right, this is what you need. That's what you need to do. And Scott also shared the formula for creating the cards. You need X, Y, Z. So there they are. So there's as I said, I haven't even really looked at them properly myself, but there's one of those 5 sections. One of them is herbs. One of them is different healing modalities for the womb. The other is different, like Yoni Steaming tea, different teas. So lots of like little kind of, if you picked a card, what do I need today? It's like when I told you yesterday, my pregnant daughter-in-law picked one. She picked out Unicut, which is a beautiful stone for the reproductive system to help pregnancy, and which was a really beautiful message from cards. I pick one now. I pick sage. A leaf of sage a day is said to keep Alzheimer's away.
How perfect.
Yep. So the little guidebook does tell you how to use them, but likewise you can just pick a card and what do I need to know today? And they feel really nice. They're really they're very soft and smooth.
They're just
I'm really pleased. And as I said, I haven't even sat down and really looked at them and bathed in them yet.
Oh, we're all just taking it in with delight that we get to be the first to know about these. Where can we get some? And where can we buy your beautiful, beautiful book?
At the moment, probably the easiest way to buy it is to go to our website, which is www.heartandsoulofwellness.com.au. And so once you're in there, it's pretty self-explanatory how you can get it. If you're in Murwillumbah or you're local, you can certainly come and pick it up at the centre, but otherwise we post it out to you.
Nice one. Oh, how fantastic. And will the cards become available on that website also?
Yes, absolutely. I think you can even pre-order them.
I see. Oh my goodness.
And there's another book on the way as well, which probably won't. Well, maybe it'll be the end of this year. We'll see. Looking to be as long and fraught as the first one. So
I think you've broken the floodgates, and I'm a big believer in the feminine leadership journey being one where if you're prepared to go first, like you were with this book, you are paving the way for the women behind you. So thank you for that, because you make it that little bit easier for another woman to have the courage and the confidence, because she can see that you've carved that pathway into the forest that hasn't yet been, the road less traveled that hasn't yet been carved. And that, yes, may this next book be a really easeful and and smooth download for you, Sally, because we all know we need it. And I just want to say my sincerest thank you to you for this amazing chat today. I could talk to you all day. Is there any parting words of wisdom you'd like to offer the women who are tuning into this interview?
Well, as I said, I would never say that Yoni Steaming was going to fix everything. But I think if it's something that you feel drawn to, and I know women are curious, I know you're curious, and it's you don't actually need to go and see someone. I think you need common sense, but certainly you can get the information from my book or from many sites on the internet of how to safely set yourself up a steam with the herbs, the water, and to trust your own intuition as to whether it's a practice that is going to work for you. I think it's really important to just mention the contraindications for steaming, which is that you do not steam when you're pregnant, you do not steam when you're menstruating, you do not steam if you have like 2 cycles a month. Like if you have symptoms of uterine fatigue, and until you get your cycle more regulated, it's not a good idea to steam.
Yes.
So, so you need to be very safety conscious. That was another thing. I was worried that somebody was going to burn themselves.
I'd say, yes.
You need to be safety conscious. You're dealing with hot steam, and so. But I think it's that. Taking the time to tune into that feminine intuition to your womb and to find out what it is that you need on any given day or time of your cycle or time of the month, time of the seasons. I think we're all trying to get back to being more land-based, land-connected, and body-based, So like you mentioned, we're not cowering in shame. We are loving living in these amazing bodies, and we don't even know how far we're gonna go with, because it's all being revealed as we speak. So, I'm getting goosebumps.
I am too, because you're supporting us to open up to the mystery, and people are so driven by certainty that we've backed ourselves into a corner, I think, into this linear corner. And when we open ourselves up to the mystery, as you've just very wisely encouraged us, it just feels like there's a lot more hope for the future for us all, and a lot more opportunity for spontaneity, playfulness, and the unexpected to happen. So I love that you're giving us that permission. Thank you to dance in the mystery of this all, and I just want to thank you so much. It's been such a privilege and a pleasure to connect with you today.
Thank you. It's been fun.